Bob Lung joins us, the coordinator of the Midwest Fantasy Expo here on the Debbie Debate tonight. We're very excited to have him. Bob, we didn't get the Expo last year because of COVID-19. We've got it coming back around here this August. The Campus to Canton crew will be there. We're a sponsor. We got a big table. Bob, why don't you talk to us a little bit, I guess, first about how this event, how you got started and how this event came about.
Well, just focusing on the event itself, I should say we. So 2019, a bunch of people went to Dallas, Texas to what was then called the National Fantasy Football Convention that was put on by Tony Romo and had been for a couple of years. They went there because they were told that, it was a fantasy convention and it was, show your products and all that kind of great stuff. But what happened was they got there and there was really what they have changed it to. It's a sports con. It's a place where you go and you meet people and you get autographs and that's really what it's all about. And there was very little about the fantasy, and they were charged a lot of money to get booths. And they felt like it was a complete waste of time, money, and energy. And so basically this was, May, June-ish, late May, early June in 2019. And, I heard a lot of people complaining about this. And it's always been kind of my dream as somebody who lives in Canton, Ohio, and has all his life, and is 5 minutes from the Pro Football Hall of Fame and sees it every day when he drives to work, that there should be a weekend in Canton that fantasy football should have. We have the Hall of Fame weekend, which is called Football's Greatest Weekend. And my dream was, why can't we have fantasy football's greatest weekend the week after? And my goal was to have a Saturday event that would be the best experts in the nation competing head-to-head in fantasy draft, both an auction and a snake draft. That started and happened 4 years ago as the King's Classic, which I have my shirt on from this past year. And that's exactly what it is. We have the best. We have, Yahoo, ESPN, CBS, the Football Diehards, Fantasy Alarm, Guru Elite. I mean, if you name a big site, they're there. And so I got the top 28 in the country. We had this in 2017, was our first year. And we do it live in the Gold Jacket Lounge at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Sirius XM comes in from New York City and does a live broadcast of the drafts for 6 hours. And that kicked off the Saturday idea. Then hearing about the need almost for a national fantasy football expo convention, whatever you want to call it, but on a much smaller scale to start. And I said, hey, why don't we just make that Sunday, the day after the King's Classic, the Expo Day, and then everybody will all just come in for one big weekend. And that started 2019. So I literally threw it together in like 2 months, but we did sell out all the booths. We didn't have the attendance from the attendees outside world came in as much as I wanted, but it was a really nice start. I learned a lot of things to improve on, a lot of things to do better, things that we just completely took out that we did the first year and didn't work. Obviously, it was big plans for 2020. That didn't happen. So now here's 2021. And it's just been unbelievable. I mean, if somebody would have said, hey, what are you expecting like in the first 3 weeks to the month after you release this drop this new website and the date on it, what do you think is going to happen? I would have said, oh, well, maybe we'll get, 10 or 20 people to sign up to come and get tickets, and maybe we'll sell a few booths, and, we'll sell the booths at some point, and it just, the next thing you know, we're past 50% of the booths sold. We sold out the sponsorships. You guys jumped in to take one of the VIP sponsors. I mean, those went like that. I mean, it was just like, wait a minute, they're all gone, But we got more sponsors, and it's just been amazing how the community has jumped in to help me with ideas. So Fantasy Affair guys said, hey, how about if we sponsor the party? And then all of a sudden the draft night out guy said, hey, what if we do a draft on Saturday during the day? Because not everybody's going to be in the King's Classic, and these guys would need things to do other than tour the hall. And so they're doing that part. And we got the big party on Saturday night. And then John Lobb jumps in and says, hey, how about if I put together the first ever college fantasy football King's Classic? Fine, perfect. So yeah, it's, the community is amazing. I've been in this world for 20 years. And so it really is, people are like, oh, thank you for thanking me for putting it together and doing all the work. And it's like, yeah, okay, I maybe I've done certainly organizing it, but just having everybody kind of step up and come up with ideas to make it better and come up with thoughts and, because I'm not a canned program. I'm not you have to do it this way. This is the only way we're going to do it. It's what can we do to make it exciting and fun and worth the people to fly in. And we got people coming in from Hawaii, Florida, Texas. Some of you guys are coming from Michigan, Maine. We're all over the country. And that to me is just amazing. And again, we're only 1 month. We're not even one full month into the release day. We came out with this. The release day was March 13th. We're not even a month in, and we're already, doing an amazing job of people coming in. So again, I thank you guys for stepping up and being one of the VIPs and being a part of this. And, again, the idea is this to grow into being a part of the whole Hall of Fame Village. I've already spoken to the new vice president of events for the Hall of Fame Village for the upcoming years, shared my thoughts, my dreams. And he is all on board, and he can't wait to bring it to the village and expand it. And we're already talking about next year's party being in the loge at the end of the stadium, at the end of the stadium. And during the party, people can go out and play football on the fields and kick field goals and, just have a blast and, just really do more, just lots of fun and unique things. So that's the whole kind of thing I kind of came up with because, I just felt like, Canton, Ohio is a perfect place to do this. Why would you not? I mean, because you can come in, tour the hall. Heck, the Rock Hall of Fame is only an hour away. If you're in the music too, you can spend a full weekend and not be bored, and that's what it's all about.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I'm anticipating a lot of Lucy and Charlie Brown type shenanigans with the party out on the football field.
Yeah, that could get ugly. Alcohol and football is being thrown around. There could be a lot of injuries.
Yeah, they don't always mix. So it sounds like this is kind of just grown exponentially and beyond maybe even what you thought it would to start off here. Yeah. Is there something in particular this year that you're really looking forward to, or maybe even beyond this year? I mean, you were just telling us a little bit about some of the stuff that you guys have planned for the future.
Well, I mean, again, it's already exceeded my expectations because I didn't expect to have somebody want to sponsor the party. I did not know that the Fantasy Affair guys are are professional bartenders and competitive bartenders. So Brian, these guys actually compete in competitions. I'm thinking like the Cocktail movie with Tom Cruise. And so, they have contacts with cigar vendors and alcohol vendors, and we're going to have special drink prices and cool, unique things going on at the party. We haven't even announced because we want to make it a surprise. So, it's a pretty decent sized bar / restaurant there at the hotel. And that's what's nice is nobody has to drive. There's a nice outside area so you can smoke cigars. We're right at the front of the hotel, so we can even stand right out in the, main not parking lot, it's kind of a drive-through, drive-up thing, but plenty of room for people to move around, big lobby. I think the most difficult part of the night is going to be when they say we have to stop. Because when they say, hey, it's midnight, we got to shut it down, we're going to like, no, that's not happening.
Bob, you mentioned some things that you've changed since 2019 with the event. What's one thing that you have learned up to this point?
Well, one of the first things I did was when I created it in 2019, I called it the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo because, again, the sports con thing was still kind of happening. And I felt like, okay, I'm just going to make it a local thing. It's the Midwest one. Well, SportsCon obviously didn't happen this past year. And when I really thought about it, there isn't really a fantasy football expo like this. So I took the Midwest out, and it's now just called the fantasyfootballexpo.com because the whole nation's invited. And, and the idea is to grow this, and we want this to be the only fantasy football expo people even think about. Now if somebody else wants to do it, Tony Romo wants to compete with me, that's fine. That's Tony Romo's job. I don't care. But the whole idea was to provide a time, a scenario where we could all get together, but we could afford to do it too. I mean, I know, like I said, the SportsCon, I think the cheapest booth was like, I don't know, $500, $1,000 just for the cheapest booth in the back. If you wanted a good one, you had to spend like $2,500 just to get a booth. So that's not even the sponsorships. I'm sure those were in the tens of thousands. So, our community is not built this way. 99% of us do this as a side gig. It's not a full-time job for us. So, we don't have tons of money to throw at this like it's a business. So I wanted it to be reasonably priced so that it could be affordable, cover my costs, make sure that, everybody could enjoy it, have fun, but not worry about, I can't afford to go because it's just too expensive. So like I said, getting rid of the name and making this into a truly national was the big thing, and making a full weekend out of it. So the first time we did this, it was about just coming to the expo on Sunday. Now the King's Classic was going on, but I really didn't put the two together at that point. Now we did have this big get together at BW3s in 2019 that everybody still talks about, where there was about 70 or 80 of us just jam packed the back of a BW3s up there, and hung out for probably 4 or 5 hours from like 6 to 11. And it was just amazing, because what I think a lot of people found out that I already knew is that these big boys and girls that are, I call them the RB1s, and we're like the RB2s and 3s. They don't have egos. If you want to talk to them and chat with them and ask them, hey, how did you get started? How do you do this? What do you think about this player? They chat with you like we're chatting right now. There's no, whether it's Mike Clay, Brad Evans, Andy Behrens, Dave Richards, Bob Harris, doesn't matter. All of them will take the time to talk to you, listen to you, and that's what everybody, people have still reached out to me 2 years later and said, Bob, it's amazing to me now how when I sat there and, somebody said they talked with like a Mike Clay there, and he said, and I asked him if he would mind coming on a podcast, one of my podcasts, and he goes, and I'm no, but he's like, I'm nobody. And Mike's like, yeah, just, as long as I can fit in my schedule, sure. And he goes, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought about even emailing or asking Mike Clay to be on my podcast. And yet here they're doing it. And a lot of these guys have done this for a lot of people. And I think that's what's so cool about it is that we walked away an even better community after 2019, and knowing that we're all in this together and we're all trying to do the right thing and trying to create new ideas, new ways to, promote and provide expertise to the users that want to hear from us. And whether it's, the Devi type stuff like you guys do, or my consistency stuff like I do, we all have different ideas and different ways of presenting it. And that's what's great. And we're all talking about the same thing. We're just doing it in different ways or presenting it in a different light. And that's what makes us different. That's what makes us special. And that's what makes us fun. So,
I think I've seen during the pandemic more of the folks that do this full time for the, ESPN or CBS, right, them appearing on more of the smaller podcasts. And that's probably something that the Expo has had a role in doing, and just making the community a smaller one from the top to the bottom. So I know that I'm looking forward to it in August. Bruno, you got any questions about the Expo itself? I know you want to talk to Bob about the consistency guide.
What's I know you talked about obviously everything that's expanding now onto the weekend. Like I know we've seen a lot of this stuff coming out. What's going on Friday, Saturday, Sunday? What's with one of the newer events going on? What's that one new event that you're looking forward to the most that weekend?
I'd be lying if I didn't say it was a party because I like to party. I'm old, so I don't get out much. So being able to, but I really don't. I mean, again, the party is going to be super cool, but I think it's just amazing that these guys have all come up with their own ideas and presented them to me of like, hey, can we try this? And I'm like, of course, and the great thing that both, that John Lobb and the draft night guys did, is gave something else for people to do that Saturday afternoon who are not in the King's Classic. And based on what you're into, what you like, you like. So if you're a college football person, you might stick around and go and watch the guys do their college football draft from like 10 to 2 or whatever they're doing. But if you wanted to come to town and want to draft, which, a lot of people like to do that time of year, and try out their expertise and do that kind of stuff, the draft night out, or I'll call it draft afternoon out, is right down the street. It's 3 blocks away from the hotel. It's in a place called the Canton Brewing Company, which is a really cool brewery there. They've got this huge basement. They're easily going to be able to fit 6-7 leagues, 85 people or 84 people in there to do that. And I think that's, I'm looking forward to all of it. I won't be able to attend all of it because I have to do my thing at the hall, but just having something for people to do and being entertained and not be bored. I mean, and I'm excited that people came up with those ideas because I would never have thought of that because I don't do college football. I don't, so I think it's great that they come up with it. And hopefully, next year, then maybe with something else. The problem is we only have so much time in the day. Heck, there was talk about a 7-on-7 flag football tournament going on until the draft night out thing came about. And I think a bunch of guys were talking about doing something like that. Hey, that's still potential. I mean, they have fields right beside the hall that you can go and play on. So there may be just some guys that decide to do that afternoon on Saturday instead of doing whatever else. So, again, somebody I've been involved as an enshrinee driver for the Pro Football Hall of Fame weekend for 30 years now. And, so I've been on the inside and I see how they do it and how there's always something going on, but there's actually multiple things going on. So it didn't, so if you like this, you can go do that. But, some people don't like this, so they go over here. So, there's just stuff everywhere to do. And so kind of took some thought processes from watching that every year when I'm driving, my guys around. And, I'll do it again this year. I have John Lynch for Hall of Fame weekend. And so we'll see, what the Hall of Fame comes up with. But it's just cool now that they're finally kind of working with me and understanding what I've been trying to do. This is literally taking 10 years for me to get them get into their heads that fantasy football is a big deal, because they used to look at me and go, yeah, that's cute. We've heard about it. Literally, that'd be their phrase. And I'm like, 50 million, 60 million people play this, right? Yeah, I know. But my husband does it. I think it's dumb, and again, I'm not trying to be sexist, but a lot of the event people were women who didn't play and their husbands played and they thought it was dumb. So why would they want a fantasy football convention to come to Canton? But, now people realize the NFL accepted it as a big deal. So I think they all kind of get it now. And so it's cool to be able to do that and bring that to, my city, my town that I've lived here with. So kind of cool. And I love the fact that you guys were campus to Canton. I was like, wait a minute. Hey, Canton. Yeah, I know that town.
All right, so some of the stuff I was looking at, I've gotten the consistency guide the past couple years. We've had you on the roundtable show, obviously with me and Dennis. I think the past at least 2 years in a row, maybe even I don't know if we had you on 3 years ago, but I know we've had you on the past 2 years. So some of the terms that always stuck out to me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, are what the key terms centered around being clutch. You say has the clutch game, clutch factor, and clutch rate. How do players earn that? And then how is that process different for running backs, wide receivers compared to quarterbacks?
So how it's kind of calculated is what a player would need to get fantasy points wise on a weekly basis to basically be listed as a starter on your fantasy team. So you could say it's always the top 12 quarterbacks, but the calculation will sometimes allow 14 or 15 quarterbacks for that week. Sometimes it's only 9, sometimes, so it fluctuates. But so 12 quarterbacks, 24 running backs, 36 wide receivers, and 12 tight ends. On an average basis, it's pretty much if a quarterback gets over about 20 to 21 points in a regular 4-point passing touchdown, PPR scoring, running backs are about 11, wide receivers are around 11 to 12, and tight ends are around 8 to 9. They get over that. Every week they get over that, they earn what's called a clutch game. I used to call it a consistent game, but consistent is long to type out all the time. So I shortened it to clutch. That's the only reason I changed it. It was too much writing, too many letters. But it was kind of the same concept. So they earn a clutch game. The more clutch games they earn, the more consistent they are. So a perfect season would be, they were over that clutch factor all 16 games, and they were 100% consistent. Obviously you want them to score a lot of fantasy points too. You don't just, somebody who just scores 12 points every week may be 100% consistent, but they're not as great as somebody that averages 20 points a week and is 75% consistent, if it makes sense. There's also a calculation called the X consistency, which is kind of like XERA in baseball, where it kind of takes the consistency numbers and your average points per games and gives you a little bit more fine-tuned numbers, so it helps kind of separate players as well. That's what those kind of 3 factors all kind of come about. The idea was to make it simple so that, you can look at one number for each player to know their consistency. And obviously closer to 100%, the better, the more consistent they are. So that's how it came about there.
So I want to ask you some quarterback questions here. So Lamar Jackson shocked the world a couple of years ago and then struggled at times last year. How do you have him projected moving forward?
Well, obviously he's a little bit farther down. He didn't have the year. And I think we all expected some regression. I think we were a little bit disappointed. I know his consistency factor this year was only about 69%. So obviously nowhere near the 93% he was 2 years ago. But teams figured him out. The running game wasn't as strong. They struggled with Mark Ingram and Dobbins. And I think a lot of teams really just figured out there was a better way to stop him. He did really well against the last 6 games because they were playing some really bad defenses. They didn't have as good a record, so they'll be playing a little bit lesser defenses, a little bit easier schedule this year. So I expect him to get back up in that probably 70-75% range. I don't know if he's going to get back in that 93 range from 2 years ago, but I think he'll definitely be up there and definitely would be a good value this year because now he's a little bit underrated.
Oops, wrong button. Right. So while you're going through your process for the quarterbacks, who's the quarterback that surprised you? That's come out obviously showing very consistent, and who's the one on the good side, and who's surprised you on the bad side?
All right. Well, that means I got to get glasses on because I'm old. All right. So I think obviously, I wouldn't say. Listen, I think we all agree he surprised us, but let's really look at the elephant in the room and talk about Aaron Rodgers. 2 years ago, he was 38% consistent. We pretty much had him washed up as being done. He was old. We were done. And he turns around and comes and pops off, he's 3rd in total points, 2nd in consistency at 88%. The only person to beat him was Patrick Mahomes. So, that was, I think, a huge surprise. Justin Herbert was obviously a big surprise as a rookie. Very few rookies, especially quarterbacks, earn over a 60% consistency in their rookie season. Herbert was 67%. We've only had 9 quarterbacks since 2010 that have done that in their first year. So that's pretty impressive. So those are my, from a bad standpoint, probably the ones that were the most disappointing, I would say, would be the people like Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, but all of them were much higher the year before and dropped down. Wentz obviously looked like a total train wreck. Hopefully he'll do a little bit better in Indianapolis with a better offensive line, better team around him. But, that was definitely some goods and some bads on the consistency scenario for those guys.
Interesting. So Matt gave me a list of questions here to ask, but I'm going to take. I'm not going to ask. I'm going to ask something different than what he gave me because he's not here and he can't yell at me. Running backs. Are running backs as a whole? You were just talking about Justin Herbert, and it kind of raised the question in my mind. Do running backs as rookies tend to be the ones that can be the most consistent of all the positions? And if so, what was Justin or James Robinson really consistent last year? Was he a guy that did pretty well in your?
Yeah. So I do an article every year because one of the questions I get in every podcast when the book comes out is, I noticed you don't have any player profiles for rookies. I'm like, well, yeah, because they haven't proved anything. But I do an article every year because that was the question. Well, what about the rookies? What about the rookies? So I did this whole scenario, and it's on. You can go to my Big Guy Fantasy Sports website and see it there. It's always in the guide as well. But basically, here's what I did. So since 2010, which is when I started tracking all this, there have been, and I'll pull up the article while I'm trying to talk, but there have been about 400 and some total players picked in the first 4 rounds. And I'm talking quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, etc. That would probably be easier if I just went to the website and looked myself. And so my goal was, 60% consistency is solid. It's not great, but for a rookie, that would be a good start to their initial season. And I wanted to see, how many rookies in their first year have produced over 60% consistency and played at least 10 games. Obviously they just went out and played 3 games, that wouldn't work. So, I got my numbers up. So since 2010, there have been 476 players drafted: quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. Of those 476, only 42 of them have earned over 60% in their rookie season. Therefore, that's about 8.2%, 8.82%. So let's say 9%. So that means 91% of those rookies drafted in the first 4 rounds in those positions did not earn over 60%. Now, to your point, though, and where I was leading to this was, of the positions, 16% of the running backs, which is the highest by almost twice, were very good and have done a very good job of getting over 60% in their first years. And yes, Robinson obviously was one of those. James Robinson would have been one of those guys last year as well. Like you said, big year for him and did a nice job. But, in addition to that, so did Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so did DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor. So they all did very good. The interesting thing, and I'll kind of expand a little bit on this. Well, I'm sure we're going to get to wide receivers, but let me expand on this for the rookie scenario. There are a lot of guys who had a great over 60% first year, but then did not hold strong to that consistency. So for every Christian McCaffrey and Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara, there are guys like Eddie Lacy, Alfred Morris, Trent Richardson, Zach Stacy. So a lot of those guys have fallen off. Now, under the wide receiver position, every single one of the guys who went over 60% in their rookie year have maintained over 60% since then. So this list is Beckham Jr., Thomas, AJ Green, Julio Jones, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Schuster, Justin Jones is new, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, Allen Robinson. So all of those guys have stayed consistent moving forward. So they're definitely one of those. So when I see one of those guys hit that, like this past year we had, who do we have? I went to the wrong paragraph. we had Brandon Ayuk and Justin Jefferson both went over, then I automatically kind of keep them up in the rankings heading into the next year, because at this point, nobody has dropped off drastically. Now, Ayuk scares me a little bit because he got a lot of opportunities because of a lot of injuries in San Francisco. Justin Jefferson, though, no, he's going to be up there. He's definitely already highly ranked in my numbers for the guide coming out this year. But that's kind of how I look at rookies. Everybody thinks I hate them. I don't hate them. I just have 91% of them that don't are over 60%. And yet you'll see people draft them way too high in redraft leagues, and they go, okay, the chance you take, but so that's kind of my whole thing on the rookies.
Bob, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. We got to run to get ready for our 9:30 show.
Gotcha.
The Fantasy Football Expo. It's going to be the Expo itself, Sunday, August 15th. There's stuff going on all that weekend, the 13th, the 14th, with the Kings Classic and the college football draft. Campus to Canton will be there. We hope that you are there also to meet with us. Bob, find Bob at Bob_Lung on Twitter. Bob, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to meeting everybody in August.
And when does the consistency guide drop for everybody?
Consistency guide will probably drop. Usually it's May 1st. But this year, the draft actually is still going on May 1st. Yeah. So we're going to have to postpone it a week. So we'll do it around May 8th. I usually have it all done and then kind of make some last-minute adjustments for where the rookies go and how they could impact some other guys' stuff. But it should be out then in that second weekend in May. So like around May 8th. So, all right. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right.
Yep.